Welcome to the Grow As We Go podcast. I'm Sam, breathwork and embodiment coach, muse, and self-growth junkie. Here we create space for natural, vulnerable, and deeply connecting conversations on life as it happens, wisdom that I've picked up along the way, and tools to truly enjoy this beautiful life you've been given. I want to appreciate you for being here, whether this is your first time or you've been here since the beginning. We love feedback here, so leave your thoughts and takeaways from this episode in the reviews section of this podcast. This also helps the podcast become a bit more relevant in search reviews. Another way you can support this podcast is by following me on Instagram at Samantha__Charles and take a screenshot of this episode to share it on your social media and share your takeaways so that your junkie friends can come and get their fix too. Hello, and welcome to another episode. Today is just me talking about breathwork. Many of you may know I am a breathwork facilitator, and breathwork has been something that has really transformed my life in a lot of ways, and I just go through the history. So I first found out about the practice of breathwork through Joe Dispenza. I've mentioned him before also. He's meditation and manifestation, the healing of the mind, body, and soul. And just like, he was really pivotal for me in my growth because he marries science and spirituality so beautifully. And I'd not experienced that before. So in one of his Facebook groups that he has, where there's people talking about different meditations and just like a Facebook community, basically, there was somebody in there talking about breathwork and specifically Wim Hof breathwork, which so that was my introduction to breathwork. And the first time I ever went to a breathwork class was one that I found in Houston. Ironically, that night there was one happening in Houston where there was a Wim Hof certified instructor, and I wasn't able to go that night, but I went the next week. She did it every Wednesday, so we did Wim Hof Wednesdays for quite some time, and that was a really pivotal moment, I think, in a lot of my growth journey, and just like a tool, like an amazing tool that I was introduced to. And I'm so incredibly grateful for it because it's really versatile. You can do short, quick little reset journeys, or you can do longer, drawn out ones that are, your breath can take you to really phenomenal places into your mind, your unconscious, subconscious mind, that it just totally resets. And so I'm going to get into all of that eventually, but just wanted to share that little bit there about how I got introduced to it and what that experience was like for me. So Wim Hof does breath and like a rhythmic breath pattern, as well as ice bath and cold therapy. So I still do that practice pretty regularly, but mostly, I've learned a lot of different breathing techniques, and I love it all. I love it all. I wouldn't say that I have a favorite. There's a way that Wim Hof holds a special place in my heart, and the technique is really, really magnificent and magical. So if you've not done breath work, I have an option to sign up on my Instagram. If you go there's that link in my bio, and I have a free 10-minute breathwork session. And I believe that one is the kind that is it's based off of Wim Hof's technique. So there's a few breath holds, and then they call it an activating breath, where you're breathing in and out, in and out, in and out. And so it's a quicker pace. And so, I'm a transformational breathwork coach. And what transformational breath work is to me is it's a conscious, connected breathing practice that it allows us to access the subconscious mind. And when we do that, we're able to release trapped emotions and trauma, and it helps rewire the brain. And so the breath work, the style that I typically lead through is, again, a very similar to Wim Hof, but it's a rhythmic breath that is much faster paced than our normal breath work. And I add in a coaching element that I believe fast tracks healing, that the healing that is already available and present with breath. And so many of the breath work journeys that I've done outside of, before I started adding the coaching element into it, it's very much self-guided, and things do come up and things are able to integrate and process in a way that's really magical and natural. However, whenever I'm doing the breath work, the coaching during it, there's a way that like I have different themes for each, and I pick certain music and I say certain things that pull at things when you're in that subconscious state and you already have the gates to that door to the subconscious mind open. There's a way that I pull out stuff that maybe would not have come up at that point in time. And also just to note that like there's no forcing or anything that can happen, I believe, with these things. The body is so incredibly wise and, gives you what you can manage and what you're ready for. And I think that it's a really, really amazing tool to support your growth. One thing that I love about breathwork is we all know the power of the body and its capability to heal. Oftentimes we can think about the immune system, or how if we fall and we scrape our arm or our knee, our body just heals naturally without us even having to think about. And I believe that there is a mental aspect to this as well. That your body, your brain, your soul, all of that is designed to be healthy and designed to be, whole. And whenever we have different challenges that we go through or traumas that happen and just different things and being a human in this world and living this experience that stops us from fully processing various traumas or challenges that we've come up. And then there's different parts of our brain that come in and it's our thinking mind that ultimately stops us from completing the healing cycle. And so what this looks like is I read a book called Waking the Tiger by Peter Levine, and he studied trauma and specifically in mammals and the way that they, handled a traumatic experience. And one of my takeaways from the book was, that mammals will shake and tremble and get all that extra energy out from their nervous system whenever they had to launch this, huge catapult of energy so that they could get away from, if you think of like a gazelle getting away from a lion. And so it had to expel this huge amount of energy and get away. And once it gets away, then it trembles for, 30 minutes or something afterwards. It trembles to get all that extra energy out and complete the cycle of that fight or flight response. And as humans, we don't do that. And also uniquely as humans, we have our thinking mind, our analytical mind that can create a stressful situation out of thin air and by thought alone. And so we can create that stress response within the body by just being stuck in traffic and feeling stressed out that we're not going to make it to our meeting on time, or whatever that situation is for you. Basically, the body does not know the difference, like the body itself does not know the difference between you being stuck in traffic and being stressed out and you being chased by a lion and being stressed out. Chemically, what happens in your body is the exact same. And so there is this influx of energy, but we're not doing anything with it. And so it stays stuck in our body, and then we suppress it as well. And so that energy gets to go somewhere, and it gets stuck in our body, and it gets stuck in our mind, and we get neurotic, and we get depressed, and we have body aches and disease and all these different things that ultimately end up happening because we're not completing this cycle, this fight or flight stress response cycle. So it's our thinking mind that keeps us there. And whenever you do breath work for an extended period of time, particularly the longer journeys that are, 30, 45, an hour long. After about 10 minutes of this rhythmic breathing, your body, there's a phenomenon that happens called transient hypofrontality, which is just really a big word for the blood flow to that thinking mind, your analytical mind, which is the prefrontal cortex, the front part of our brain. It slows down a bit, not to the point where it's damaging or anything like that, but it just lessens because typically we're thinking so much. And so blood goes there a lot because it's being used. And so whenever you're breathing rhythmically, the analytical mind is able to slow down and calm down. And so it needs less blood flow. And with that comes a calming sensation and an ability for you to step out of that thinking mind, and the rest of your brain capacity, which is the subconscious or unconscious mind, that's where we're able to relax and not think so much and allow the body to do the healing that's necessary. And so they say that the body is a representation of the subconscious mind. And what that means is the body keeps the score. There is a book called The Body Keeps the Score, and it's a really fascinating story about basically what I just shared, where we have all these stress responses and we're constantly in a stressful environment in this day and age. And with all of that energy that's being created basically by our mind, which is really fascinating if you just like pause for a second and think about how powerful our brains are and our minds and the power of thought. Just in this little conversation alone is incredibly powerful. Your mind, your thoughts have the ability to create a chemical reaction inside your body that you get to experience. And it has effects, whether you see it as positive or negative, which, for a long term, yeah, it's negative on your health. But that your mind can create that. It's just absolutely fascinating to me. So the body is the subconscious mind, and the body keeps the score. So when we have all these stressful loops happening over and over again, and we're not fully expressing them or fully letting it play out and letting our body lead and heal completely, then we keep it in our bodies and it gets stuck and disease happens. And whether there is disease in the mind or the body or even the soul, we won't talk about that on this episode, but so we're getting back on track here. The autonomic nervous system, and then you also have the somatic nervous system, which are two branches of your nervous system. So autonomic, if you think about things that happen automatically, that we don't really have control over per se, would be things like your cardiovascular system, the way that all that works. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to do anything to have your heart beating. It just does it on its own. Your digestion is the same way. Your endocrine system, your respiratory system even, although we can manipulate the breath, the rest of it, the way that oxygen exchanges with your blood and the way that it goes into all the different alveoli and different branches of your lungs, you don't have to think about that. It just happens. So pretty much all the systems in your body are in the autonomic nervous system. And then you have the somatic nervous system, which is the one that you are able to manipulate. So if I decide I want to raise my hands up in the sky, I can do that, and my muscles do what I'm thinking about doing. And so that's the somatic nervous system. So we're going to stay on the conversation of the autonomic nervous system. And within that autonomic nervous system, there are two branches of it, the parasympathetic and the sympathetic. So the parasympathetic is the rest and repair part of your nervous system, which gets a lot of attention these days and things that we get to shift into because, typically in this society, we live in the sympathetic, which is the fight or flight nervous system, and that is activated. And so if you've heard people talking about, having a dysregulated nervous system, or, I need to do these different practices to regulate my nervous system, What that means is there is a over-exaggeration and overuse of the sympathetic fight or flight response. And so these people are doing different things to help balance out the nervous system. And what I feel like is really important to note here is that the sympathetic nervous system, that fight or flight ability that we have, is not bad. It's not negative. It's an amazing thing. It's a beautiful part of our nervous system that allows us to take action and create and move through things and think quickly and on our feet and all these different things. And when you stay in that all the time, it's not great. And I think that also, on the other side of the coin, if you were to switch and do, be very intentional about your parasympathetic and just staying in rest and repair forever, like that's not balanced either. And so it's this ebb and flow, and like your body naturally goes through stages of being in the fight or flight or the rest and repair throughout your daily life. If you're not, constantly bombarding it with stress hormones and keeping it stuck in that world. Okay, so we have those two parts of our nervous system, and the autonomic nervous system is also where the subconscious mind lives. And that's why breath is the perfect tool to heal the subconscious programmings that we all have. And another really amazing thing about breath in particular is that it cycles in between both of these parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system, as well as the autonomic and somatic nervous system. So breath is something that we are able to manipulate, and also it happens without us needing to necessarily think about it, which is really, really powerful. And it's literally the key. That's how I think of it and how I get all excited about it, because it's literally the key. It's the key to tapping into your subconscious mind, to tapping into your body and connecting your mind and your body. And so when you think about there are mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual benefits to breath work. The autonomic nervous system houses all of the systems in your body. So bringing yourself to rest and digest more will support your body in doing what it was designed to do, which is heal. So if we're able to use our breath in a rhythmic way, in an intentional way, as we'll say that 3 times fast, in an intentional way, then we are able to create any sort of transformation or support in all these different systems that we have. And so it's a really, really powerful tool that you literally have control over, and you can decide how you want to do it. And what ultimately ends up happening in these longer breathwork sessions is I like to view it as a form of therapy, basically, that you don't necessarily have to understand. A lot of forms of therapy, like talk therapy or inner child work, there's all different kinds, and I see value in all of them for sure. And you can also couple it with breath work, where you can set an intention in something you're wanting to work through, or if you have set up like a private one-on-one with me, and we can come together and see what you're up against, what you're wanting to transition through, and or just have more support with, then I would create a one-on-one. I would create the playlist there's a theme throughout all. The music that I pick is very intentional. And then I use different coaching elements to bring forth the different things that may be potentially hiding in your subconscious, and asking questions and giving you space to pull out what maybe is the root cause. Maybe it's a memory, repressed memory, or just some repressed emotions from your past that you weren't able to heal through in that particular experience. Because I know, there's sometimes whenever growing up, like, emotions weren't safe. And, like, if you ever had that experience, or that, that saying of like, what are you crying about? I'm going to give you something to cry about. And so that's really scary as a kid, especially because it's like, well, I'm already upset and I'm about to potentially be more upset. So let me just stuff all these emotions. And so even as kids, we're not processing emotions. And so with breathwork, if you go back into your, early childhood, you can go back into those moments and not necessarily relive past events or past traumatic events even, but you can go back and experience it and be in a state where you're able to view it as as the witness, essentially. And you can also go in and grieve and have those emotions, feel that sadness, feel that anger, whatever it is. And when you're in this subconscious state, you are able to express more freely. The body shakes. I experience a lot of shaking in these longer sessions. And the body gets hot, which is typically anger. In these longer sessions that I coach, there are typically two, but at least one. I like to do at least one cathartic release. So it's a big scream, a big yell where you're really in the music. It's just so perfect. I love it. If you've not experienced it yet, I would love for you to reach out. And I have a few, I do these periodically, like over Zoom. And I also host different events in person where I do these longer journeys. I have a women's only group going on that's called Unbridled, and I also teach them. I do breath work. Typically, it's not these longer journeys in my Sacred Sisterhood half-day workshops that I'm hosting as well. So if you're interested in learning more about either how to work with me one-on-one or get more information on when my next class is, whether it's virtual or in person, I'll put all this information in the show notes. And also if you're connected with me on Instagram, that's a really great resource to figure out how to work with me. But so I have these big cathartic releases that happen, and it's a really, really wonderful experience and just a huge release to get rid of these old emotions that have been stuck and old energy that have been stuck within our bodies. And so the difference between the longer breathwork sessions and like a therapy session where you're talking and processing and understanding, there's a way that the body is so incredibly wise and you're able to process through things without necessarily needing to have an understanding of what it is. And our minds really like to have reason and for everything to be tied up nicely in a bow and it all makes sense. And not to say that doesn't happen, because there's been many times that I've done a longer breathwork journey and I get just the right answers. I get exactly what I needed out of it. And I think that's what you get out of breathwork, exactly what you need. And so sometimes there are answers and sometimes I just feel lighter and there's not really a rhyme or a reason. And I think, I'm not doing it right. There's all these different things, but it's like, no, your body knows how to heal. And whenever you give it the opportunity to, whether you're actually crying during the longer breathwork journey, your experience, whether you're crying through it or sweating or shaking or, going out of your body or having visualizations or like having answers to your questions or to your intention, or if none of those things are happening, you get to just trust that your body is healing and your body knows what to do if we just allow it to heal. It's really fascinating. And yeah, so I can go over just really quickly like some things that I like to cover before my longer breathwork journeys, different like sensations and things that can happen. So also contraindications. So there are a few contraindications. Breathwork is typically it's one of the most safest things that you can do. There's just a few conditions that you might want to take some either special caution or talk to a breathwork facilitator such as me, and with some cases even your doctor about it. So if you're pregnant, that can be something that you would want to be mindful about, because we are, inducing that fight or flight with a more active breathworks, which is typically what I teach. You are pushing the stress or fight or flight it's a more activating breath. And so we're activating the sympathetic nervous system, which is that fight or flight thing. And you're like, oh, but I'm already stressed enough. Why are we doing this? What it actually is like you're pushing it to push through and then come back over. So it's like a reset button where you push through the amount of stress to be able to come back down to like homeostasis and be more in a rest and repair state. So that could be something you get to either, it's like, I was telling a friend of mine, if, there are women who, they say, oh, don't do any heavy lifting or don't run or don't do all these different things when you're pregnant. But if you've been doing them, your body's used to it. And so you should be able to sustain it. Like there's pregnant women who are bodybuilders still, or they run a lot, and it's because that's what they have always done. And so it's not a new thing for their body. And so if you've not ever done breath work before, or these longer, more stimulating breathwork sessions, then you could get started slower, or you can do intentional breathwork that's not as activating. So you'd be taking big, deep, long breaths that are not necessarily as quick as they would be in the more activating forms of breathwork, if that makes sense. So then it's much more calming, where you're taking deep, full inhalations and deep, full exhalations, and doing that, for 10 minutes or something, and build your way up. And there's a lot of different ways that you can go about it, because breathwork is incredibly supportive in stress, anxiety, depression. It really calms your nervous system. And so there are a lot of benefits to it while you are pregnant. You just get to be mindful of the type of breath work that you're doing. Another contraindication would be if you've had like a recent heart attack or have chronic cardiovascular issues. And then also if you're on any heavy medications, particularly those that regulate like oxygen and carbon dioxide levels in your blood, because in these longer journeys especially, there's a manipulation that happens with those levels in your blood. If you've had any recent aneurysms or seizures, that's another thing to be mindful of. And so with all of that being said, you get to talk to your doctor, and you can talk to a breathwork facilitator and see, because there's a way also that breathwork can be incredibly supportive to healing all of those aspects or all of those conditions. There's a lot of science and a lot of testimonies to prove that. And so just doing some research and being your own guide, and being able to trust yourself and your own words of wisdom. Throughout these longer breathwork sessions, that's what I was wanting to share, is that there are 3 areas that you may experience sensations through. And so it's physically, mentally, and emotionally. So physically, there may be tingles. You can feel, because we're shifting the blood oxygen levels in a way that's not as normal. There's tingling that can happen. And there's also a way that you can start to feel lightheaded, but we always lay down, and so it's safe. And then you also could start going in and out of sleep, because you're slowing your brain waves so much so that you ultimately, I've had multiple times where I've just fallen asleep. And I also believe that there's healing that, our bodies heal a lot and process a lot in sleep. So that's a really beautiful experience as well. With mental, there's a way that your brain likes to come in and oh, this is too hard. Oh, I don't want to do this. You can't do this, and start to think about all these other different things happening. But if you're able to push through that, you can get to the other side where your mind just quiets and your body takes over and you're not thinking about it. And so there's a way too that your mind just goes quiet. And if you're anything like me, that is a rarity, a rare experience, because my mind is just constantly all the time. And it's challenging before I knew about breath work to get any sense of peace and calm and like quiet and stillness within my experience. And so breathwork has been incredibly supportive for that, just like in these longer experiences, but also just as a whole. And then lastly, there are emotional like sensations that could come up. Because basically what I was saying this whole time is there's a way that we shut down our mental capacity, or our analytical brain, I should say. And that just allows, because we spend a lot of effort and a lot of energy compressing our thought, or suppressing our emotions and suppressing our feelings, and I shouldn't feel this way, or I shouldn't want that. And just we put all these, there's so much like pressures from, whether it's, from your own standards that you got from growing up, or from society, or because somebody told you something. And so there's ways that we just suppress so much with our mind alone. And it's like I said in the beginning, where your mind is incredibly, incredibly powerful, and how you can create these events in your body just by thought alone. You also can suppress your emotions by thought alone, and it's wild. So whenever your mind begins to quiet, it allows the body to do what it does naturally, which is heal. And so it will go back and begin healing some of these emotional cycles that weren't complete. So sometimes I've experienced crying, shaking, and like getting hot and angry, and just like in my breath, sometimes they get heavy, and I start making sounds and like grunting and yelling even before like the big cathartic release. But what I tell people is that it's incredibly important that we don't continue to push it down, or try to stifle our tears or our emotions during these processes, because that's what we're here to do. We're here to heal. And it's our responsibility to heal, and so that we're not passing it onto our kids or onto our friends. And in our relationships, it's our responsibility to take care of all that. And so that's what you're there to do in breath work. And so if you need to cry, then cry. If you need to shake, then shake. If you need to yell, let her fucking rip. Let it go, get it out. It's not serving you anyway. So let's go. So that's about all I have for today. My little short-ish episode on breathwork and my journey through it, and why I feel like it's just incredibly supportive. So if you have any other questions, or there's a piece of this that feels unanswered, or if you want to dive deeper into the mechanics of things and what's all going on, reach out to me on Instagram and let me know. Also, if you care about learning more at a deeper level, one-on-one, and what breathwork could do for you, you can schedule a call with me and we can talk deeper about it, schedule a session, and get you started on your own healing journey and breathwork practice. I'd love to support you in that. And of course, if you found anything on this podcast useful, please share it, spread the word, sharing the link to your friends, taking a screenshot of this episode and posting it on your social media and tagging me. I would so appreciate you spreading the word and letting me know your takeaways on Instagram as well. I love hearing like what you learned, what you got out of this episode, and the value that it brought to you. I don't know unless you tell me. So looking forward to hearing from you, and thank you so much. If you found parts of this podcast interesting, useful, or at the very least entertaining, I hope that you'll share your takeaways and tag me on social media, or leave a review. And we appreciate you, and we'll see you next time.